Well, now, Iain Duncan Smith's resignation was designed to cause maximum damage to the Conservative leadership. That from the Pensions Minister, Baroness Ros Altman, who says it's actually all about Europe. But in the last few minutes, Mr Duncan Smith has revealed how painful he says his decision was, and says it definitely wasn't to do with the EU. Well, I'm joined now by the Energy Secretary, Amber Rudd, and a very good morning to you. Well, we've heard Mr Duncan Smith this morning. You've read his resignation letter. Even after all that, do you fully understand his reasons for resigning? Well,
I have to say, I do remain a bit perplexed about it. The whole series of events that led up to it seemed to indicate that he was making progress. He wrote this Dear Colleague letter on Thursday night, setting out why he was doing it and why we should all support it. And then there was the government change of heart on it. So I know I don't really understand it. I do remain perplexed about it. But above all, I'm pretty disappointed. I mean, this is a man who I sat at Cabinet with for nearly a year. I mean, he was obviously a Cabinet Minister for 6 years, but I've sat at Cabinet with him every week for the past year. I do respect him. And so to suddenly launch this bombshell on the rest of us in a way that is difficult for us all to understand is just really disappointing.
And do you feel personally offended that, in a way, it paints you in a bad light? If you support that budget, he said it was deeply unfair, particularly the cuts to middle-earning taxpayers. They got tax cuts, and then we had this on benefits.
Yeah, I do find it sort of really extraordinary that he's taken that line. I mean, we were at Budget Cabinet on Wednesday morning. He didn't make any of these points which, you know, we would have listened to and discussed with them if he'd chosen to do it. So I find that sort of inconsistent, to be honest. But secondly, I also completely disagree with him. We are a government that is looking after everybody. We are a government that specifically tries to help the lowest paid, taking as many people as we can out of tax, investing in apprentices, making sure we create new jobs. This is about helping everybody, not just helping one segment.
Well, it's not the way Mr Duncan Smith sees it, is it? Because he said precisely on that issue about One Nation Conservative Party that he wants to help people who might never, ever vote Conservative.
That is where we completely disagree, Mr Duncan Smith and myself. And I think with the rest of government, this is entirely the intent of this government, is to be a one nation government. You know, in this budget you just saw, we focused on helping people who might need the hardest help. We also focused on infrastructure, making sure we can build those important parts of infrastructure that will help invest in the country, create the jobs, attract businesses. So I think he's completely wrong on that. And I do resent his high moral tone on that when the rest of us are absolutely committed to a one nation government. And so I do find his manner and his approach really disappointing.
Do you think he's been dishonourable, the reported words of the Prime Minister?
It's not a word I would use, but I do find it very disappointing. I do think we're a team as a government, as a cabinet, and he has broken ranks with that team, and it's upsetting.
Do you think there is another agenda here, namely the European Union referendum, that it's not necessarily just about the budget and these cuts?
Well, I think that Iain was asked that question on the Mars show, and he gave a robust answer that it wasn't. So I think we must take him at his word. But it will give him an opportunity, I know, to campaign on what he believes in, which is for an exit from the EU, which I think would be very dangerous.
But I mean, aren't you going to say, well, he already had that opportunity, given that the Prime Minister had removed collective responsibility when it comes to this debate?
Indeed, he did already have that opportunity, but he's now created a bit more time on his hands, hasn't he?
Well, do you think it's also designed to do damage, as has been said, to the leadership credentials of George Osborne?
Well, I certainly hope not, because, you know, we've got a team that is delivering on our manifesto plan. And let's not forget, we were only elected just under a year ago with quite a good majority in order to address the difficulties, financial difficulties of the economy and of this country. And we have a team that is delivering on it, and we don't need a new leader. True, David Cameron has said he's going to resign by the end of this Parliament, but, you know, that's 4 years away. So let's concentrate on allowing the government, the team in Cabinet, to deliver on what we've tried to set out, which is a stronger economy for everybody.
Do you think it was a good budget?
I think it was a good budget, absolutely. It focused on raising more money from difficult places, like on multinationals. We've set out how we're going to raise another £8 billion over 5 years. And it focused on helping the lowest paid as well, taking them out of tax, and some additions like helping the homeless, which is so important.
But Iain Duncan Smith said the problem with, that precise policy was going to be consulted on and then ultimately was withdrawn. He still resigned. That the money still had to come from his department. Those cuts were still going to happen because of the welfare cap.
Yes, and that's right. And we now have a new secretary, the excellent Stephen Crabb, and he will take a fresh look at it and see what can be done about that. The fact is that these proposals for PIP were set out by the Department of Work and Pensions. So they made these proposals. Iain has then moved in this particular way. Let's hope that the new Secretary of State takes a stronger, clearer approach while protecting the most vulnerable.
Just some of the comments Baroness Altman, your colleague, made about Iain Duncan Smith. I mean, she's been very forthright. She says they're personal, but clearly it's a view that will be supported by you and ultimately Number 10.
Well, it's interesting, the comments that she's made. She's worked directly with Iain Duncan Smith in the department, and she has made these comments personally. I do think that Baroness Altman was a great person to work on pensions. She had strong experience working at Saga, so I think she's a very good, strong minister in the department, and I'm sorry to hear of the experience she's had.
But the quotes, designed to cause maximum damage?
Well, I can't comment on that. It's her personal view. I just think it's very disappointing that he's made this choice and made it now.
And on this issue of being able to speak out on the EU, she says, in particular, I was astonished that he attacked his own government for producing what he called dodgy dossiers on the EU situation.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have used that term of language, and I noticed that a lot of people who support the exit from the EU distance themselves from that particular language. So, I mean, it is creating a certain sort of different campaign, obviously, because collective responsibility has been lifted. That term of words was perhaps not even supported by his own people, but we will see.
But last one from Baroness Altman, I found him exceptionally difficult to work for. How did you find him over the cabinet table?
Well, over the cabinet table, I didn't find him difficult because we were working together. But as a team player, it is disappointing that he's made this move in this way. OK, just want to ask you a question, obviously, on your brief, on your department, and so many major concerns at the moment about the future for energy supply within the UK, whether we can so-called keep the lights on, because we've got, obviously, the move away from particular coal power and burning carbon fuels, and then these huge gaps in terms of delivery of things like Hinkley. Do you worry that, say, over the next 10 or 15 years, we may end up with an energy deficit? I don't worry, because we're taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen. We're absolutely clear in my department, and we have a very focused strategy on delivering clean, secure, affordable energy. Nuclear is a part of it. Hinkley will be part of it, but it's not the only part of our nuclear strategy. In the budget recently, the Chancellor gave us additional money for small modular reactors. That could be a very interesting part of the future in delivering clean, secure, affordable energy. So no, I don't worry, but I am very focused on making sure that we can always do it.
OK, well, Amber Rudd, very good to see you,
Thank
Secretary
you.
of State. Thank you very much indeed for sparing the time.